Southwest Florida's newest game in town brings you all the NFL action that you're asking for. Lloyd and Kevin have all the news, updates, trades, and rumors from the NFL. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game starts now.
Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back on 102.9 The Game and the Coast Sports Network. So glad everybody can be with us. Great times around the National Football League. Lots to get to. So glad Kevin could be back with me this evening. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing well. Can't wait to get into this past week of what happened. Good Lord.
Yeah, it's trick or treat time around everywhere, and everybody's getting ready for Halloween coming up, and it was interesting because there were some tricks, there were some treats around the NFL, and I think we're starting to get that separation that we had hoped for now. There's also a lot of parity, though, too, in the National Football League because some very bad teams actually decided they wanted to keep playing, which I was surprised, and we'll get to those games. But I can't start talking about this week without going to down the Turnpike, Washington. I mean, the Commanders are dead in the water. Everybody's saying, okay, finally they're coming back to earth. Jaden Daniels had a rib injury, and Jaden Daniels throws a Hail Mary. It was measured 56 yards. It's 65 yards in the air. So he throws it to Noah Brown. They have the walk-off TD against the Bears. What did you see in that? And everybody started to talk about Jaden Daniels as possibly not only Rookie of the Year, but maybe an MVP candidate. Could he do that?
Whoa, slow down on the MVP talk already. Good gosh, we like to anoint people early, don't we? The one take I have from that game is Tyreek Stevenson's an absolute idiot for the Bears. An absolute idiot. If you've seen them break it down, he's taunting the fans, I believe, on the sideline as the play's going on, then tries to get back into the play and does the Cardinal rule because the first thing you do is what? You try to knock the ball down. No, I want to tip it in the air and let it play out a little longer. That guy is an idiot.
Yeah, and little early talk for the lackey, but he's right at the top of the mix, Kevin. And when you're going at the fans and everything, and I remember coaching my sons in their little league teams. I was like, look, it's desperate times out there. You could actually almost tackle somebody. They're not going to call pass interference or anything on that Hail Mary play, but Stevenson, they knock it up in the air, and Brown, he was wide open right behind him. So you got to put that up there with the Doug Flutie to Gerard Phelan back in the day over the Miami Hurricanes, and Cordell Stewart throwing one up there to Michael Westbrook in a big house against Michigan. So many big Hail Marys, and that's the type of play. You talked about the NFC East. It's a two-horse race basically, and big win for Washington, and they're a team that's dangerous. I still want to see them play somebody that, much like the Eagles, who we're going to talk about, their schedules are kind of a little light. I guess it's because of the interdivisional games or who they're playing. But they're stacking W's, Washington. And we know in the NFC East, there hasn't been a repeat champion since 03-04. That was the Eagles way back in the day. So it changes hands all the time. And we'll get to the Dallas Cowboys and the mess they have there. I know, you're still crying for them and owner Jerry Jones over their situation. But, Washington, very good win for them. And I'm not going to say they're in the driver's seat in the division, but when you look at the numbers, huge game for Daniels, 21-38, 326 yards, a TD. He had some good rushing yards as well. And then conversely, Chicago, this is a game that may haunt them because they are in the basement of the NFC North, and Caleb Williams, and we'll get your take on this, 10-24, 131 yards, looking very tentative in the pocket. And Eberflus, he's a coach. What is he doing? They called on a crucial third down and goal. They hand the ball off to their backup center, Doug Kramer Jr., who fumbles. What are you doing? Why are you trying to get cute there? Why not hand the ball off to Swift or Rashawn Johnson? But some head-scratching moves by the Bears, and they're going to have to pull their stuff together. So, what did you see on the other side of this in terms of the Bears?
I see a team that's going to go through some growing pains with some young guys. I think the coach was in panic mode because you're trying to reinvent the wheel right there. Just feed your running back, punch the ball in. It's like everyone's gets so smart that they're the next boy genius coach who comes up with these great calls. It's like, just go with what works. And like I said, with a young quarterback, you're going to have these up and down kind of games. And that was one where Caleb Williams hopefully can grow from.
Yeah, and a big week coming up for both teams, and it's going to be prove-it type games for them coming up in Week 9. You have Chicago, who's 4-3. They're traveling to Arizona, who's now 4-4. You have Washington, 6-2. They're going to have to guard against a letdown against the New York Giants. And speaking of the New York Giants, I know Monday Night Football is getting ready to kick off. The Giants travel to Pittsburgh. What's your take on this one? I think Pittsburgh kind of got right in the last couple weeks, and now Russell Wilson kind of clicked out there, and they're finding a running game. Obviously, a tremendous defense, and we know that the Giants allowed 8 sacks to the Eagles last time they were out there, and now you're going against T.J. Watt and Alonzo Highsmith. So, very tough battle. I think that the Steelers will win this one, and they'll probably win big. I think the line was probably they were given like 9 points or so.
All I know is for selfish reasons, some of us have Pittsburgh. So we need Pittsburgh to have a nice big defensive game today to round out our week. I don't see this as on paper, I should say this way, Pittsburgh should run away with this. But once again, they play the games for a reason, and if there's a theme of this week, teams that we thought were done show up and play. So we're going to see what the Giants have in the tank tonight.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I always think in you because you got 11 fantasy teams. How are you managing your teams? One of my emailers asked me, he said, you got to ask Kevin how all his teams are doing. Are they all in contention? Has he given up on some of them? What are you looking like with your 11 fantasy football teams?
Well, the thing is, I don't give up on any of them, just for the fact, there's some I love a little more than others, but it's like they're your kids. It's like, all right, I brought you into this world. I want to help raise you and get you through the season. But there's my one, everyone has the one where there might be a little more incentive to win that one. And in that one right now, I'm on fire. I close out this week. That's 4 in a row right there. I'm already locked. I'm lining up for a playoff spot. So, but you got to worry about it. It's like sports itself. Am I peaking too early? Do you want this winning streak that you have right now to hopefully be on the back end of the season? Because once again, that injury bug is right around the corner.
Yeah, and it's crazy because the injuries will rear their head around the National Football League. We saw it in a couple games in particular. Jordan Love goes out with a groin injury. In Green Bay's turnaround, they still won the game. You had Stephon Diggs go out with a knee injury. He's still getting an MRI. And Houston Texans, they still got to win. But these are big injuries. And you're right. You just never know in terms of fantasy when your guy's going to go out. And you got to be like, okay, what's going on here? And are we going to keep playing? And the big one was, though, and on my bench, which was crazy. My younger son was like, Dad, you got to play him. You got to play him. Was Puka Nacua Thursday night. And I was like, if I play him, he's going to only probably get 2 catches. And I was just burned by Juju Smith-Schuster, who pulled his hamstring and got a big fat 0 for me. And I lose by 5 points the week before. So I was kind of gun shy. But, Puka Nacua Thursday night, we'll talk about this game. This was a fun game because it was a prove-it game, and everybody's talking about the Rams are done, and Cooper Kupp's going to get traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they came out and they had a lot of fight in them against a Minnesota team who a lot of people thought, okay, Minnesota is one of the top teams out there coming in at 5-1, but the Rams turned the table on them 30-20. Stafford 25-34, 279, 4 TDs, only 1 interception, and then we talk about he got cut back. 5 catches on 8 targets, 51 yards at TD, and Puka Nacua just looked like he did not miss a step. He had over 100 yards in this game, and he looks like he's back. They're back. So they're 3-4, and the NFC West is just a crazy division. The top teams at 4-4, all of them. And so now the Rams are only a half game back.
The one thing I will say, and it's not one of those I'm saying it because it actually came true, I like the Rams in that game. I like them getting everyone back. And then one of the reasons why was because of the trade rumors. You had Stafford mentioned in trade rumors. You had Cup mentioned in trade rumors. So what do people usually do before the trade deadline? They show out. They ball out. And it's one of those things I knew those guys were going to show up. Did I think Nakua was going to play like that? Absolutely not. But at the same time, it's like, if they're clicking, I mean, McVay still has a team there in that division to compete with. So, I mean, they're not out of the mix by far.
Yeah, and McVay, who's their coach, and then you have Les Snead, their general manager. Yeah, I'm sure they're looking around maybe to get some defensive help, but I think they stay pat on offense. Kyron Williams is playing at a high level as well. He had 97 yards rushing and receiving TD. He's playing, great football. And let's not forget their offensive line is very beat up. So the Rams are a very dangerous team. And you're right, November 5th is a trade deadline coming up, and it's going to be at 4:00, 4:30, and we'll see what else happens there. And D-Hop just got traded to Kansas City. We'll get your take on that. But yeah, I just think in today's NFL, a lot of these teams are still in it. So why trade your guys? Why not fight to the end? And everybody always points to these teams. Like I remember covering the 2008 Philadelphia Eagles. They finished 9-6-1, and they snuck into the playoffs. They got hot, and they went all the way to the NFC Championship game, losing to the Cardinals. So, these situations can happen around the National Football League. So I think a lot of teams are going to be like, no, I'm going to hold on to my guys till the end. So what did you think about all the trades that happened earlier? Mostly, it's receivers. You have Hopkins going from Tennessee, from Purgatory, from Levis. Now he's playing for Mahomes. And then you had Devontae Adams. We'll talk about the Jets in a second. I mean, or if you don't want to, but
no, I want to. I want to. Yeah.
What do you think about these trades, man?
I just remember I go as far back as 10 years ago or so, 10 to 15 years ago. You hardly ever heard of a trade at the trade deadline. It's like the NFL trade deadline was just this big whimper. It's like, oh yeah, that was a trade deadline. No one really made the moves like they would say in basketball or baseball or anything like that. Now you see guys making moves all the time now, and it's actually nice. It keeps you right, you're in the mix and all, but you rarely still see that big blockbuster trade that you wait to see.
Yeah, and then a lot of these receivers, it's like a salary dump, and it's like, okay, a lot of these guys are divas, and they're like, let them be somebody else's headache, and you have teams like the Chiefs that are receiver needy, and why not give a chance? And then these guys are playing with the best quarterback in football. I know his stats don't say that, but Patrick Mahomes has been the best quarterback this last generation, and they're going to get their opportunities there. So we're talking about Week 8 here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, the Coast Sports Network. So glad you can be here with us. Kevin and I are bouncing around the league, talking about different topics. He and I are both based pretty much in the Philadelphia area, so I wanted to get Kevin's take on this, and I was talking with our producer, Angel, before we came on the air. Is it time to buy into the Philadelphia Eagles? Are you buying high on their stock? 3 straight wins. You talk about a hot team. Yes, who have they beaten? You kind of say, okay, they beat Cleveland, they beat the Giants, and the Bengals they're 3-5. So I thought it was a good, solid win for the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. Still have not scored in the first quarter, though. And the Bengals, they had a 10-minute drive to start the game. So the Eagles did not have much chance. But these are kind of some of the things that you're like, okay, are they for real? Should I buy into them? I've been listening all day on the radio and hearing all the fans. A lot of people are very excited about the Eagles. Talk to me about this win. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is the engine. He had 4 total touchdowns in this game, 1 passing and 3 rushing touchdowns.
I will give the Eagles credit on one thing. It's the manner in which they won this game. It wasn't like the Cleveland game where it was ugly, that kind of thing. It's like they went in and they pulled away. And that was good to see, from a team standpoint right there. It wasn't they just eked it out. The one thing I'm starting to pay attention to during these Eagles games now are Sirianni implosion calls. And watching the Eagles when the score's 10-9 and he's trying to line up to go for 2 points going towards halftime, what are you doing? You tie the game, you go into the halftime, then you figure it out. Luckily, they kicked the extra point, but it's like just the fact that ran through his head to try to go for 2 points baffled me.
Yeah, and it's like I still wonder who is calling the plays. Is it Kellen Moore? When it works, Sirianni's like patting himself on the back. Oh, that was me. But if it doesn't work, he's like, oh, it's Kellen Moore. I might hear him say, oh, it's Brian Johnson.
Mhm.
Brian Johnson's now in Washington. He can't blame him. It's a situation where the defense is finally they got some teeth, and it may be, as we said, who they're playing and stuff. The Bengals offensive line, it has some players, Orlando Brown Jr. and some other guys they picked up. So they're not as bad as the Giants in Cleveland situation right now. But defense doing a good job in terms of getting turnovers. That play by Isaiah Rodgers where he knocked the ball up in the air in the third quarter right into the chest of C.J. Gardner-Johnson. That was a huge play in this game. So the defense is getting some pressure on the quarterback, getting turnovers, getting Cooper DeJean out there. Q Mitchell's playing a good corner out there as well. So it's good to see the rookies out there making plays. And with the Eagles, the big thing is Hurts has his two main guys back now. A.J. Brown, 8 catches for 84 yards. Devontae Smith, so quiet. A lot of people always forget about him. This guy's a former Heisman Trophy winner. 6 catches, 85 yards. He had that big TD in this game. Talk to me a little about Jalen Hurts and how he's played better with his two receivers back.
I mean, it couldn't help but it could only help him having those two guys out there, and the fact Goddard's been out all this time as well. Even though Calcaterra is one of his more favorite wide receivers once you take out the two big guys at this point. Uh, I mean, could you imagine having Devontae Smith and AJ Brown as your two wide receiving options? But his biggest problem, I think, and he did it more so last year. We'll see with Devontae missing time this year and AJ missing time this year, is the balance of keeping them both happy in the same game. Because you'll see one game where AJ would go off last year, so you knew who was getting the ball next week, Devontae. And the week after that, it's like, all right, let's go back to AJ. It's finding that equal balance to make both guys happy during the same game, and I think Jalen's still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that's a good point you made there because last week I think Smith only had like 1 catch or something like that. So you can't have a big ego in terms of if you want to be a team player, but we know so many of these receivers are egomaniacs. They want the football, they want their stats, they want the contract, and it was like they all read from the Chad Ochocinco playbook, back in the day, me. But um, good win for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Hurts since the bye, 3 straight wins. And the key thing for me, too, Kevin, is he's not turning over football. He had 7 turnovers in the first 4 games, 0 turnovers in these last 3 games. And his QBR rating's high. I think a big thing is they're trying to work on getting him under center. And the big thing to me is they're leaning on Saquon Barkley. I think this is a run team first, leaning on him. He's a playmaker, man. And a quiet over 100 yards in this game, running downhill and able to close the game out in this 37-17 road win.
Yeah, Saquon has definitely been all as advertised. I mean, there are certain games he basically carried them himself for wins. He's that home run hitting running back that they haven't had in a very long time. He's one of those guys, they love him in the locker room as well. He's not all about himself. He's not the diva running back. That being said, if I'm the Eagles and I'm inside the 5, instead of rushing my quarterback, risking injury, how about you feed Saquon Barkley and let him punch it in? Why do you keep putting Jalen Hurts at risk with the tush push and everything else? Because it just takes one time, him jamming his neck, him jamming his shoulder. It's like, you let your running back run.
Yeah, and he's sticking his head in there, and we've seen a lot of these quarterbacks with concussions. We'll talk about a couple in a few minutes. Um, it's a dangerous play. And Kelsey was so good at it. He got low. That's the thing. You've got to have your, maybe Jurgens is doing a better job at it than he was earlier in the season. But, Kelsey gets low. He would get low, take the other guy's legs, and then Hurts would basically fall into it. So Eagles are very good at running that. But as you were saying, you don't want your quarterback. To me, the sweet spot is he needs about 8 rushes or less a game. You don't want him running the ball 10, 15 times a game, taking hits. And he's not a big slider. He's not a guy like Mahomes or Kyler Murray. I was a former baseball guy, and they know how to get down. And sometimes he takes unnecessary hits. And as you said, 17-game season now, very long season, and you're like, okay, you got to protect yourself out there. Now coming up for the Eagles, um, I was looking at this though. Everybody's feeling good, but look, let's talk about who they've beaten. They beat the Green Bay Packers 6-2. They beat the Saints 2-6. Cleveland 2-6. Giants are 2-5. We'll see about tonight, and then Cincinnati 3-5. A combined 15-24. Is this schedule light? How should somebody feel about the schedule for the Philadelphia Eagles? Should they just say, "All right, a win's a win," or my big thing is, okay, as they get to the playoffs, everybody starts wondering, okay, are they like 2023, where they're going to have this swoon late in the season?
It goes to the old adage: you can only beat who's in front. They put in front of you. So they're beating the teams, that they're in front, that are in front of them. That being said, you have to judge almost not win or loss, but how they played in that win. Like the Cleveland win, was that a good win? Not really. It counts as a W, but was it a good win? Absolutely not. Cincinnati, the way they pulled away, the way they distanced themselves, that was a good win, especially on the road as well. A team they haven't beaten since the year 2000. So that I was impressed with them a little bit this past week. Am I bought in? Am I all in on them? Absolutely not. But they're starting to get me there. I'm starting to warm up.
Yeah, and it was a good solid one. As you said, good teams will step on the throat of a bad team. They had no hope in that one. The Bengals did, and that was the thing. They kept Cleveland hanging around, and Cleveland had some hope in there. And you're like, oh my God, how are they almost going to lose these guys? Now, upcoming, as I said, the Eagles. We'll see. Jacksonville 2-6. Then they're at Dallas, who's 3-4. Washington 6-2. That's going to be a good game, good barometer to kind of figure out who they are and in this division. At the Rams, who are 3-4. At Baltimore 5-3, and we know Lamar Jackson 23-1 versus NFC. And then they get a nice layup. They play Carolina, who's 1-7. So, a mix of some easy games, some tough games, but you cannot look past anybody in the National Football League. And that's what we led the show with, Kevin. And we're talking about the upsets here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football here on 102.9 The Game, Coastal Sports Network. This game was like, are you kidding me? We kind of led with it, and we were like, what is going on with these guys? They're the national story. Aaron Rodgers, he's supposed to be playing like Tom Brady when he was 40-some years old. No way. And they're becoming a national laughingstock. And the problem is they're on national TV all the time. I'm talking about the New York Jets. They fired Robert Saleh a couple weeks ago. Ulbrich is not looking much better. He's looking like he may need to get fired too. But then where did they go? So the Jets get embarrassed up in Foxborough, 25-22 to the former one-win Patriots, and they lose this game. And to make matters worse, the Patriots even lost their quarterback, Drake May, to a concussion. You talk about running and getting hit in the head. He got knocked out. And it was Jacoby Brissett who did them in. And Aaron Rodgers, 17-28, 233, 2 TDs. But he's just seems disinterested, or he's lost his fastball. Rodgers, 30 straight games without 300 yards passing.
He's washed. He's done. I don't think he has the intestinal fortitude to try to even come back and win. He's trying to get by on his skill set that he had his whole career, and his skill set isn't what it used to be. You're right. He's lost a couple miles per hour off the fastball. He can't do what he used to do physically. I think he's ruined that franchise for when going there and the moves that they made to try to accommodate him. I think kids in the New York, New Jersey area are going to start wearing Aaron Rodgers masks for Halloween because he's so frightening to that area right now. I can't wait for this guy to go away. That's just my opinion. Take it for what you want. But Aaron Rodgers, I'm done with, because they are trying to build it up like the Brady when he got older, or even Favre when he got older. This guy isn't them.
He's not. And what started all, Kevin, was, all right, this offseason, he didn't care. He was there gallivanting on vacation and not getting ready for the season. Well, guess what? The chickens are coming home to roost. The Jets are 2-6. They've lost 5 straight games. Their kicker is terrible. Zerline, I don't know why they haven't gotten rid of him. He's missing kick after kick. Mosley got hurt defensively, and our offensive line's leaky. Yes, they brought Devontae Adams in, and as you were saying, Rodgers was the architect of this team. Yes, Joe Douglas is the GM and Woody Johnson is the owner, but they allowed Aaron Rodgers to say, "Okay, I want to build this team with this crony and that crony," and it has not worked. So this 2-year experiment is failed. And the crazy thing is, Zach Wilson had better stats than Aaron Rodgers after 7 games as a starting quarterback. So you talk about a guy, yes, he's a Hall of Famer, and he, but it's over. It's over. Nate was going on. He's like, Dad, he may be the worst quarterback in the league right now, and Will Levis, he could battle Will Levis and Deshaun Watson. We know he's out as well, but he's playing on that level, and it's just embarrassment. I guess everybody in New York watched the World Series. They were excited about the Mets. Baseball's still going, but their football teams are in bad shape. So the Jets now 2-6. The road doesn't get any easier. Now they got to play the Houston Texans, who are 6-2. That's on Thursday Night Football, so it's going to be right there for the nation to see. I'm sure C.J. Stroud will light them up. Now, Stroud did lose, as we said, Stephon Diggs to a knee injury. We'll see how that goes. They will probably get back Nico Collins soon, probably not this week, but in the coming weeks. And then, you do tip your cap to the Patriots. As we said, they were a team fighting for the number 1 overall draft pick going into this game. Now they're 2-6, here's a game for you, and we'll go over all the games later. But in Week 9, this has got to be the toilet bowl. It's New England 2-6 at Tennessee, who's 1-6. Come on, you got to watch it. You got to watch it, man.
You know what that is? I remember growing up around the Philadelphia area, and the games would actually be blacked out in our area if they didn't sell enough seats. And every now and then, like Channel 10 would buy up all the tickets so we could watch the game. I see that one of those situations. It's like, I don't want to go there, and I don't even care if they show it in my market. I'm going to pass.
Yeah, it was when we were kids. It was the Eagles versus St. Louis Cardinals. That was always the game. Mm-hmm. Nobody wanted to see. And Big Al Meltzer is like, trying to get people to come in. It's way before StubHub and all the other stuff, and the cheap market.
Yep.
Hey, I'm a football crazy guy, and I do have Garrett Wilson, who caught a lot of passes in this game, so I will be watching. Garrett Wilson is a big time player, and you could see his frustration in terms of Aaron Rodgers. Yes, he got a lot of targets, a lot of catches, but this Jets team is just a mess. They're going to blow this thing up after the season. Joe Douglas, he may be on a hot seat, the general manager out the door as well, and then the whole coaching staff. So crazy times up there with the New York Jets, and we'll see how they go. Now, talking about blowouts and teams, this team, Kevin, is impressive. The Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have scored 172 points in the last 4 games. So they're clicking on all cylinders. I think the score was 52-17. It was a total domination blowout in terms of they just destroyed Tennessee. So no, wait, they didn't take Tennessee. They just destroyed their opponent. So what are you thinking? Yeah, Tennessee had Mason Rudolph starting at 2 interceptions. It was 35-14 at the half. Are the Lions for real? For so many years, they were the laughing stock around the National Football League, but you put up 52 points in any NFL team. Are they for real, and where do they go from here?
I think it goes without saying they're the best team in the NFC right now. But once again, are they peaking too early? They pack their lunch. They take the lunch pail to work. They do what they're supposed to do. They blow out a bad team. And if you look at the stat line on the running backs, the wide receivers, it's not dependent on one person. I think Laporta had the most catches for he had 6 receptions for 48 yards or something like that. So Goff's spreading the ball around. Both running backs got a touchdown. They're distributing that way. They did everything that you're supposed to do when you get a bad team. Dismantle them, get rid of them early, spit them out, move on to the next game.
Yeah, and the thing is, Ben Johnson's back as offense coordinator, and they're clicking all cylinders. Montgomery, a 9 rush, 35 yards at TD. He also threw a touchdown. Gibbs is just electric. He only had 11 rushes, but he had 127 yards, a long TD run again. And then you talk about spreading the ball around. Khalif Raymond had a punt return TD, had a receiving TD for them. So a lot of guys are getting involved. And the only thing you have to worry about with this Lions team is they lose Aiden Hutchinson to a bad ankle injury a couple weeks ago. With the trade deadline coming up, maybe they jump in and try to make a trade for somebody and help out Aaron Glenn's defense. That's the only area where they kind of have Achilles heel. So this week, coming up week 9, and we'll preview this game in a minute. You have Detroit 6-1 at Green Bay 6-2 now. We're not sure about Jordan Love, groin injury for the Packers, but hopefully everybody's healthy, and this will be a good barometer game for the Detroit Lions.
Definitely, and it would be a shame to rob the fans of the National Football League of seeing Malik Willis play instead of Jordan Love against Detroit. It's one of these games where you want to see the two best go at it, and not some kind of question mark. Well, they play with a backup quarterback, so hopefully Jordan Love can get out there.
Yeah, and Jordan Love, he played a consistent game, and they're on a hot streak too. The Packers have won 4 straight games. Big win for them. Brandon McManus, former Temple guy. I actually know some family members, him from North Penn. He's a local guy from this area. Second straight week where he's kicked a game winner. What's going on with the Jacksonville Jaguars? They're coming to Philadelphia. Trevor Lawrence had a bad fumble in the third quarter that kind of turned this game. 21-32, 308 yards, 2 TDs, an interception, a rushing touchdown. Nice line for him, fantasy football line. But there's just something wrong with this Jaguars team. And I just think it's a matter of time for Doug Peterson may lose his job there.
I think Doug's probably on the way out. I think we spoke about it last week. If they lose that game in London, Doug doesn't make that flight on the way home with them. So he got that win there. They have too much talent on that team not to be this bad, I should say. They should be a more competitive team than this. They had playoff aspirations. I mean, even with Etienne out, Bigsby's been filling in, doing a really good job for them. So I don't know where they're missing this at, whether it's the play calling, whether there's some internal strife. But this is going to fall on Dougie at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the one player, you talk about fantasy football-wise and a rookie contributor, Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, he's just playing tremendous for Jacksonville. Ingram as well, their tight end. He's making some big plays, but there's not a lot of guys, particularly on defense. They have Hines Allen and not many other guys back there helping him out. Trayvon Walker, former first-round pick, he's hit or miss for that defense. So, Jacksonville, they're kind of limping in coming to Philadelphia, and that's going to be a tough assignment for them. Green Bay, as we said, they're another team like the Eagles. They can beat you a variety of ways. Jacobs, he had 25 rushes for 127 yards, 2 TDs in this game. They're getting their tight end involved. Kraft, he had 3 catches for 78 yards. And then Dobbs seems to be the young receiver that's stepping up, but they still have Watson and Reed and a bunch of other guys. They're probably one of the NFL's youngest teams. They have over 2/3 of their rosters under age 25. So it just shows you Green Bay, good ascending team. And like I said, hopefully they'll have Love ready for the game for that groin injury. If not, it may be a different story with Malik Willis. So that game's in Green Bay. We'll see how that one turns out. We're bouncing around the National Football League here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Thanks for joining me and Kevin this evening. This game was interesting because, Nate came home. We were watching a lot of it together. The Buffalo Bills go to Seattle and win this one. Big win for them. It was an ugly game. It was drizzly. It was rain. It was close early. And then you saw the dominance of Buffalo. Their 4th straight win, all of them by 21 points or more. What are we thinking in terms of Buffalo? Have they turned a corner? And now they also have Amari Cooper, another big trade guy coming over from Cleveland. I
mean, you want to talk about MVP, Josh Allen right there. That could be the guy right there. It's his MVP season, perhaps. If he closes out strong. Adding of Amari Cooper definitely helps that team going forward. They definitely need another wide receiver. I was thinking about, we were in the off season, you're doing training camp. I mean, we're just throwing out hypotheticals, who's going to win the division, who's going to go playoff spots. And everyone, like, every now and then throws out a hot take that you don't really believe, but you throw it out there because you want to say you made the call, that kind of stuff. One of my little hot take things, Buffalo is going to miss the playoffs this year. What an idiot I am. But it popped in my head the other day. I was like, I think I said that. So I want to own that one. That was a mistake. Buffalo, next to Kansas City, is probably the best team in the AFC right now.
Yeah,
and it depends where especially if you have to go to Buffalo for the playoff games, they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah, so and Buffalo wins this one 31-10. There were a couple key plays in this game. Josh Allen did throw his first interception in this one. And you talk about his numbers. That was always his bugaboo. And when you talk about the MVP race with him and, Daniels or whomever, Lamar, his numbers are up there and the team is winning. And I think voters like that when the guy's winning, you say, okay, this could be a season. And I talking about owning something. I said the Jets. I thought the Jets would be in the mix for a playoff spot. Wrong. And you talk about this division. It's over. It's basically over. You got Miami's in second place in this division at 2-5, and then you have the Bills leading it at 6-2. So they could be laughing during Christmas. But the thing is, they probably want to keep their foot on the gas because they want teams to come to Buffalo where it's cold and bad weather. And the thing with them is we always said, Josh Allen puts on a Superman cape and he's running the ball too much. Well, James Cook has become a very good running back. 17 rushes, 111 yards, 2 TDs in this game. Big win for him and the Buffalo. And now Buffalo, Miami's coming to Buffalo. Miami's 2-5. They never really play well in Buffalo. It's cold, and I think that's going to go pretty well for the Bills there. And then the receiver that stepped up wasn't Cooper, but Shakur had 9 catches for 107 yards. And if you're in a PPR league, man, that's a guy, one of them guys you want because he's catching a lot of those short slants, moving the chains. Wanted to get your take on, though. There was a big brouhaha with Seattle. 2 of their defensive linemen, Reed and Hall, they start fighting after their defense kind of got on the wrong page. Is this something Seattle fans need to worry about, something that happened? What do you think in terms of that? It was kind of embarrassing watching those 2 guys grip each other up the sidelines.
Yeah, it's something to worry about. When you start busting out against each other on, national TV, it's a problem. And Seattle got out to a decent little start here. But you're going to see, once again, if there's any kind of internal strife on that team, it's starting to leak out now onto the field and everything else. So Seattle's a team to keep a watch on to see if they start to spiral.
And it's interesting because Seattle's lost 4 of their last 5 games. They have a rookie head coach in McDonald, and you're really not sure, okay. And then Geno Smith, he's bounced around the National Football League, journeyman guy. Yes, he kind of turned around the last couple of years. But, I'm like, is he really a frontline quarterback? So, Seattle has a huge game. We talk about this whole division. It's like 4-4. So the Rams at 3-4 going to Seattle, 4-4 this week coming up, and big opportunity for them. But you're right. The Bills right now, Kansas City's winning the games and everything. But, the Bills were right there behind them in terms of one of the best teams in AFC. We're bouncing around the National Football League here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. This game, speaking of the Chiefs, they get the job done 27-20. Ho-hum, they win another game. It's the Raiders. You talk about schedules. I was looking at the Eagles schedule earlier. This is a game they had to win. And it's crazy because the Raiders were the last team to beat them in December on Christmas last year. So the Chiefs are riding a 9-game regular season win streak, and it was a good, solid win for them. Minshew actually played well this week, 24-30, 209, 2 TDs. But it was just an efficient Chiefs team. And on National Tight Ends Day, they kept saying that over and over again. Kelsey had his first
Yeah.
touchdown of the game. 10 receptions, 90 yards, and 1 TD. Just in time since I traded for him.
Mhm. Yeah, that was big for Kelsey, actually. I mean, like you said, it took him a while, I think, to even get into shape because his off season was, being all over Europe and everywhere else. He didn't put in the same time that he was putting in the past. So if he's basically playing himself into shape right now, you're adding a Pro Bowl wide receiver if he's engaged to play the way he used to play. And the fact is, you add a DeAndre Hopkins, and I don't even think it matters who you put out there for Mahomes. He's just going to hit somebody with a pass. He doesn't even care what guy it is. It's like, all right, it's you, it's Kadarius Toney, it's Rice, it's Worthy, whatever guy they plug in there. It's the wide receiver du jour. He's going to find you.
Right. And it's the rebirth of running back this year. And Kareem Hunt, 21 rushes, 59 yards, 1 TD. Not eye-popping numbers, but he's being physical. He's moving the change for them. And then they're running ball and they're playing good defense. Because Spagnuolo has Bolton and the rest of those guys flying around the football for their defense. And Casey is, as we said, just stacking W's. And they're just going to wait and see how the postseason goes. Now, obviously, when you look at could they beat the Bills in a key game? Could they beat Baltimore in a key game? We're going to find out once playoffs roll around. But good win for the Chiefs. And next week, Tampa Bay comes to Kansas City on Monday Night Football. I'm looking forward to watch that game. Vegas, this could be a good right game. You have Vegas going to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's desperate. They'll probably win that one. So good quality win for the Chiefs, but in their division as well. Who's really challenging them? But speaking of who's challenging them, I may have to eat some crow because I was like, Bo Nix. I thought at Auburn, okay, I saw him at Auburn. And at Oregon, I'm thinking, okay, you're throwing a ball over the barn, But he's playing extremely well for the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos win. I know who they played. They win 28-14 over the Carolina Panthers. Yes, they beat up a bad team, but solid win for Bo Nix. Apology letter soon from Lloyd Vance to him. But, talk to me about Bo Nix and what Denver can do.
Tell you what, Peyton's done himself a nice little job up there, hasn't he? It's like
Yes.
we were kind of writing it off. It's like, all right, he waited all this time, and that's the job that he took right there. And then with Bo Nix there, it's like I didn't think they were going to do anything this year. That's for sure. So the fact they have 5 wins at this point, that everything else I think is a cherry on the Sunday. I mean, he's doing a good job. He's running the ball. He's with the 2 running backs, McLaughlin and Javonte Williams. He's spreading the ball out to some wide receivers. I think they had attempts to him. It was like 8, 9 guys yesterday. They were spreading the ball around. So Bo Nix, he's picked up the game quicker than I thought he was going to. I didn't think he'd be playing at this level. I'll give you that.
Yeah, and you can't talk about Denver without talking about their defense. I mean, their defense has just been tremendous this season. Patrick Surtain has had another great year in terms of secondary. And then the other corner, McMillan, he had a nice pick in this game. They just harassed Bryce Young in this one. Obviously, Bryce Young, he got to play because, Andy Dalton gets a car accident. They put Young back out there, poor kid, and he has 2 interceptions in this game. And you're right, Denver is one of those sneaky teams. And when you start talking about that 6th spot, that 7th spot in the playoff race, they're one of the teams that could actually get in there. And I'll be honest, I thought they were done. I said, oh, Peyton's going to be on a hot seat. He's another guy that lost his fastball. Well, you know what? He's kind of turning around there in Denver. They're built around that defense. Javonte Williams can run the football. They have kind of a nondescript receiving core there. But, Nix is spreading the football around, and he can run. A lot of people don't give him credit. He can move around. He's made a lot of nice plays this season with his legs. So good win for them. Denver, now we're really going to find out about them next week. They're at Baltimore. Both teams 5-3. It's a desperation bowl. Going to be fun to watch. And then you have Carolina. You talk about another toilet bowl. Carolina 1-7 at the Saints 2-6. So, and you got the Saints. The Saints, unfortunately, they don't have their quarterback as well in a situation where I just don't know if they're going to overcome the loss of David Carr and Spencer Rattler. Yeah, he's a good young player, but the Saints are another team that's just kind of downtrodden. I think they're going to finally blow that thing up because Dennis Allen, he's one of those coaches. You're like, all right, how's he sticking around? I still remember him when he was with the Raiders. Um, Another bad loss. They lose the Chargers 26-8. It was a total. It was a snooze fest. I watched only pieces of this game.
Pretty much. It's like trying to see who's fantasy relevant and also just trying to see some red zone updates. That was about it. That's all my attention span can handle.
Yeah, it's funny because Scott Hanson and them, they're like, all right, we got to show this game just because we got to show every football game and every score. But they cut over to it and it's just like, all right, it's Chargers are 26-8. Oh, there was a safety in this game, which everybody was kind of talking about. Spencer Rattler was taken out of the game. Harner, he's just as bad. Both of them were 21 of 40 combined throwing the football. Now, a guy that did break out, and we have to tell you talk about fantasy. He should have been a waiver wire pickup, and I think it's his uncle. I could never stand his uncle playing for the Giants, Phil McConkey. But Lad McConkey, 6 catches, 111 yards, 2 TDs. I mean, he's kind of breaking out for the Chargers. And then you have Dobbins, 12 solid rushes, 57 yards, a TD. So, Chargers aren't pretty. They're playing that hardball-esque, tough physical football. But what did you see in terms of the Chargers? Can they keep this going? I think maybe they can sneak into the playoffs at 6, 7 spot.
This might be one of the best jobs that Justin Herbert has done because he's always had the luxury of having big wide receivers he can go to, running back like Austin Eckler who can get him yards. Now he's actually having to be a more cerebral quarterback. Take your time, try not to make the mistake. Don't force it when you don't have to. So he's doing. I think we're watching the maturation process of Justin Herbert right now. So in a year from now, when you go get him a big weapon, he's going to be better suited for it.
Yeah, and they're only going to get better, because Harbaugh has a nice long contract. He's not going anywhere, and they're going to improve. They have a very nice offensive line. Rashawn Slater and a bunch of other guys, and their defense, Derwin James and the rest of those guys are really picking up. Hopefully, they can get Bosa healthy. He always seems to be hurt and miss time. So, good win for the Chargers. They're now 4-3. They're going to the Browns, who are 2-6. Got to beware of that home dog. They cannot look past them. The Browns. It's crazy because the Browns, another team that kind of sprung a trap on somebody. And we were like, this is the hottest team in the NFL. The Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson is looking like an MVP, throwing for 5 touchdowns last week. Well, this week, they lose to the stinking Cleveland Browns. They lose 29-24 in this one. Everybody's like, don't worry, they'll wake up to win this game. Well, there was a bad drop late by Rashad Bateman. And then Kyle Hamilton had a chance to close this game out, and he dropped the interception right in his hands. And then Jameis Winston, of all people, it just shows you how much they can't stand Deshaun Watson. They are ecstatic over the moon with Jameis Winston in Cleveland. Talk to me about this big upset.
It was funny because I'm around the Baltimore area as well, and somebody asked me on Sunday what I thought about the game, and I said, I'm not touching it. And they're like, why wouldn't you touch that? They're going to beat Cleveland. I watched Cleveland play Philadelphia a couple weeks earlier. I was like, Cleveland's going to play them. They're playing without Deshaun Watson, which, believe me, that team's more pumped up playing without Deshaun Watson. That and the fact Nick Chubb was back for another game, and also it's a division game, and Baltimore plays tight they play tight games with in their division. I wanted no parts of it, and to see the outcome of it was the smartest thing I did all Sunday.
Yeah, it's crazy because it was Jameis's first start in 2 years. This was the most points that Cleveland has scored this season. So you're right. I think they're rallying around Jameis Winston. They're like, okay, we finally got Watson out. He's a guy. He was not galvanizing the locker room. I'd heard rumblings that some guys were on the same page with him, and you saw him fight with his offensive lineman and so forth. But it ends a 5-game winning streak for Baltimore, and Baltimore, you could totally see they looked past them and they said, "All right, we'll turn this thing around," but they never did. And a big thing was they never really got Derrick Henry going in this game. He only had 11 rushes for 73 yards. Yes, he did get a TD in this one, but it would be smart to Harbaugh and or the offensive coordinator there to lean on Henry. Stop trying to. Yeah, Lamar. Yeah, he had 5 TD passes, and it all looks well and good, but that receiving core is still nondescript, and you saw that with some of the bad drops in this game. So, a guy you have to talk about in terms of waiver wire pickup fantasy wise, Cedric Tillman for the Browns, 7 catches, 99 yards, 2 TDs in this one. I know everybody's racing to get him before Wednesday.
Yeah, well, there was a couple situations. It was Tampa Bay with all their wide receivers. Which one do you grab and which one do you put in? Cleveland, it's the same thing. It's like, who do you grab? Who are you going to put in? And there is one guy in my league, I will say he's a Ravens fan, and he makes a trade to get Bateman because Bateman had that big game on Monday night. So he gets Bateman, right? And he picked up Tillman. He was on the waiver wire close enough to get Tillman. So since he's a big Ravens fan, who's he going to start? Rashad Bateman, and left Tillman on the bench. So that was a nice little loss for him this week.
Yeah, he had that one bomb. I think it was like one catch for 30 yards and nothing else. It was one of those. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I thought about grabbing him, and I said, I don't believe in him enough. But with that Tillman, he was sitting out there, and I don't think he's on a lot of rosters around the NFL in terms of fantasy, and he put up some big numbers. So Baltimore, they're going to have to turn things around. They are hosting the Broncos, 5-3, who we just talked about. Maybe the Chargers can keep it going. They're 4-3. They're at Cleveland, but they cannot. It's a trap game. So Jameis Winston, 27 of 41, 334, 3 TDs, no interceptions, but there were a couple interceptions that the Ravens should have had in this one, but they didn't. Big win for the Browns, and they show they still have a lot of fight in them. And speaking of team, and I want to get your take on the subplot in this game. Speaking of teams that fight them, the Cardinals. The Cardinals are out 4-4. Everybody just thought, they'd go down to Miami and lose this game. The big story, though, was Tua Tagovailoa getting back out there after concussion, very bad concussion, and he missed 3 to 4 games, I believe. What is your take on Tua being back out there, and then talk to me about the game a little bit?
I mean, everyone's talked about it. It's like he won't even wear the special protective helmet. He wants to hop out there and play, and it's his right to do it. But you would just hope that someone in his family and someone has had those conversations with him. You have a long life ahead of you. You have your bank account set. It's like, if anything, take more time off. You don't have to rush to get back out there. Because even Kurt Warner, remember, he took off that time to become a backup for the Giants and everything else because he so many concussions. And then he came back after resting for a little bit besides being a backup, went to Arizona. What happened? Went to a Super Bowl. So Tua, as a young man, he doesn't have to rush back so quickly. But does it help that Dolphins team? Oh, God, yeah. Tyreek Hill said he was in tears when he heard that Tua was coming back. And so are his fantasy owners, too, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he got back in the mix and made some nice plays. But, they lose 28-27, and Kyler Murray's playing a lot better. Nate was like, you make sure you tell Kevin that I was right about Kyler. Kyler, 26-36, 307 yards, 2 TDs, no interception in this game. Huge game for him. And he's getting involved. And Nate picked him up as his tight end. McBride, he had 9 catches for 124 yards and so on. Marvin Harrison had some great diving catches. And all of a sudden, the Cardinals are on a 2-game winning streak, and we'll see if they're able to keep going. I'm not sure about their defense, but it was good to see Tua back out there. The thing is, though, as you were saying, Tua, he took off running, and I was holding my breath, and then he did a late slide, and I was like, oh, boy, somebody's going to blast him. But, he survives the game. Hill, as you said, was happy. 6 catches for 72 yards. Waddle, who we have not heard a lot from, 4 catches, 45 yards. Miami, they got a tough assignment going to Buffalo this week, and we'll see if they're able to turn things around. But with that defensive front, we'll be holding a breath for two. Hopefully, they don't hit him too hard. Russo and the rest of those guys on that defensive line for the Bills. Arizona, another prove it type game. Arizona now 4-4. They're at Chicago, who's 4-3. So, anything else on this game? What are you thinking in terms of Arizona and are they for real?
Well, one thing I'll own that one from Nate for Kyler Murray. I'll own that a little bit. It's a long season, Nate, but we'll see. One thing I want to say is when we wrapped the show last week, I got to watch the second half of the Monday night game with Arizona. Okay. Marvin Harrison Jr. should not have been playing in that game. He was coming off the concussion, and I don't know if you've got to see it, but even the announcers were making remarks about it. Look, if you looked at his eyes, if you looked how uncertain he was, and it's like that kid wanted no parts of being on that field, and I have no idea why they had him out there. But that being said, it was nice to see him bounce back yesterday and put up a nice game.
Yeah, he's a tremendous talent, and sometimes it's weird. Sometimes they grab a guy and they take him off, with the spotter finding him or anything. But then there are other times they're like, oh, he's okay. He goes in the tent. Mm-hmm. I always like, do you remember the time Russell Wilson, when he goes in the tent, he flips it over, and then he ran right back on the field. Yeah. So it's like, come on, this protocol thing, you got to protect them from themselves. You got to take their helmet. Mm-hmm. Some of these guys, you got to take their helmet from it. And it's just unfortunate because I always remember, Andre Waters, one of my favorite players, and he had CTE and unfortunately killed himself at the end of his career. All these guys you heard about, and then they had the movie as well. So, yeah, hopefully they're safe. But I still can't believe they're talking about playing 18 games. You talk about the number of injuries. They're going to have to incentivize the players a lot to play that extra game. I know they're going to get rid of another preseason game, which is great. But talk to me about 18-game season. Is it feasible?
No, it's not. The whole thing is, it's like for the NFL, it's a cash cow. But how much is enough? How much money is enough? You have to, at the risk of these players that are basically helping pay for your multi-stadiums and your billions of dollars, you're going to put these men at risk for an extra game. And it's at a certain point, it's becoming a greed level. It's not about human beings. It's about greed and how much money they can line their pockets with. But are they going to go to 18 games? Absolutely they are.
Yeah. They sure will. And it's just a matter of time. Once they redo that CBA, they'll get the extension out there. That'd be one of the first things. And they'll put a little bit more towards retirement. But, yeah, and a lot of these guys, their career is only about 3 years anyway, so they may not even reach retirement age. So it's just crazy to me because the game is so physical, so hard-hitting, and it's the only sport that doesn't have guaranteed contract. Well, other than Deshaun Watson. But that's another story. Here in Lloyd Vance Insider Football, we're talking about Week 8 on Coast Sports Network 102.9 The Game. Kevin, this was an interesting game because you have the Atlanta Falcons. They sweep the season series from the Bucs. Now, the Bucs are one of these teams. They are so up and down. You think, all right, they're in the mix. They're going to, be one of the top teams. Baker looks real good. Well, this week, bad Baker showed up. And they're wearing the creamsicle uniforms, which I kind of like. Remind me of my buddy Doug Williams out there with Leroy Selman and the rest of those guys. But there were some key plays, and you're like, what are they doing? The Bucs in the third quarter, the score was 24-17. The Bucs decided to do a big fake punt, and they're stuffed. So it's things like that. It's like, I know you're trying to jumpstart your team because you don't have Godwin, you don't have Mike Evans, but there were just some head scratchers, and it's a big win for the Atlanta Falcons down there in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it's almost when you're playing some of these teams, you don't even have to do extra yourself. You have to just wait for them to beat themselves, to just sit there and put themselves in situations where they shouldn't be in. Next thing you know, you have the ball in a great position. And Tampa Bay just seems like they're good. They're just not really good, or sometimes they're just bad. So, I mean, once again, they're that middle of the road. You don't know who's showing up each week.
Yeah, and the thing, luckily for them, the NFC South is they're still kind of in the mix because you have the Atlanta Falcons leading that at 5-3. No, the only thing is, as I said, they've swept them, so they really have a game in hand on top of everything. And we'll see Atlanta and if they can keep going. Kirk Cousins is playing very well. He's another guy. I'll admit, when we were talking about preseason, I was like, what are they doing, paying him all that money, and then they draft Penix? Do they have a plan? Well, Cousins 23 of 29, 276, 4 TDs, and he had a big scramble for a first down. He's playing very well, and his team seems to be rolling. So Atlanta's going to Dallas. Big game, kind of prove it game, and they can bury Dallas if they want to. And you talk about the number of weapons that they have. Bijan Robinson playing well. You have Mooney making a lot of big plays. Drake did not have London did not have a big game for them. But is Atlanta for real?
Yeah, regular season Kirk Cousins is really good. It's postseason Kirk Cousins where the questions start to come in. Kirk can hang numbers. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And are they the best team in that division? Probably, yeah. I mean, you throw in the Saints without a quarterback. I mean, them and the Carolina Panthers, you're looking at like 4 wins right there if you catch them at the right time. So Tampa Bay can probably hang just for the fact they have New Orleans and Carolina in that division, but that should be Atlanta's to win.
Yeah, I would think so. And they were my preseason division winner. And it's funny, at certain games, I was like, oh, it's not going to happen. But their defense is playing very well with Jesse Bates and a bunch of other guys making some plays for them there. And then offensively, I talked about all the firepower along with their offensive line led by Matthews. So big win for them. They move on to Dallas. Tampa Bay, as we said earlier, they're going to Kansas City. That's on Monday Night Football. We'll see if Baker's ready to play. But if he's playing bad and Chris Jones, those guys get after him, it could get ugly in that one. One last game we're talking about before we get to our weekly awards here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Broad Street and South Network, Coast Sports Network, is Houston. They did just enough to beat Indianapolis. Now, to me, though, the story of this game, and I want to get your take on it, is Anthony Richardson is not good. I mean, he's completing 44% of his passes. He was 10 of 32, 175 yards, a TD, and an interception. To be honest with you, I think they played better under Joe Flacco. And Indianapolis is 4-4. They have a chance for a wild card. Are they doing the right thing playing this kid? Is the kid done? I think Steichen may be fighting for his job as well. If he's going to hang out on that tree and let Richardson, push him down the hill, it's going to happen because he's not good.
I think Richardson's a big, strong kid. There's no doubt. He took hits and he kept moving forward. But emotionally, he's soft. He's so soft. Did you see him tap out to come out of the game? When he tapped himself on the side of the helmet? It's like, you're in the middle of the season. You're in a big game right here, for the division, and you need to come out of the game. You're the quarterback of the team. You stay on the field. It's like, what are you doing? That's emotionally soft. The man was not injured. He just needed a moment for himself. And that's like, you got to be kidding me right now. And that's why they're a better team with Flacco out there. The ball gets down the field more, and they can put up more points with Flacco on the field. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and you have Pittman and Downs. I mean, these guys can make plays. And Flacco's getting the ball to them, and you saw it. I think Pittman only had 1 catch in this game. It was good to see Jonathan Taylor get back in this game for the Colts, but the Texans are another one of these teams. Yes, they had a bad injury to Diggs, but they can beat you a variety of ways. You had Joe Mixon, 25 rushes, 102 yards, and a TD in this one. And then you had the other, Tank Dell kind of stepped up, had some big catches for him. You had Mitchie, who nobody, wow, Mitchie's still on that squad. Woods is still on that squad. So they still have some receivers for C.J. Stroud. Big win for them. They swept Indy. This is another, in division, that's a big thing. You want to go 6-0 in your division, and that's what the Texans are kind of leaning towards in this AFC South, where they may run away from it. So Indy is going to Minnesota. That's a tough assignment because Minnesota, as we said, they're probably going to be angry after losing on Thursday night to the Rams. And Houston just got to be wary of a letdown here. They're going to the Jets, who we talked about. That's Thursday night football. That's a short week. I don't think they're going to get back Collins or any other receivers, so they're probably going to go in there and see what they can do. But it'll be a matchup between, C.J. Stroud and that defense led by Sauce Gardner. So interesting times around the National Football League, as we do every week around this time. One of my favorite things, all my emailers, everybody, text me and ask me, all right, who's your game ball winner? Who is it? Who is it? So I'll let you go first. Who is your game ball winner for this week 8?
My game ball winner is for National Tight Ends Week. Helped my fantasy team, bolstering it with 25 points. Mr. Kyle Pitts in Atlanta finds the end zone twice. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yep. And it's funny you say that because along the same line, National Tight Ends, if you watch that Sunday night football game, the guy that was just dominant was George Kittle for the Niners. And the Niners needed that win. They're going to have a bye next week. 6 catches on 7 targets, 128 yards, had a TD. He also had a long catch that set him up on the 1-yard line. So Kittle gets my game ball. Other guys I got to give honorable mention to, Jalen Hurts. We talked about his 4 total touchdowns. The Lions overall, just dominance. Jaden Daniels with the Hail Mary. And even Jameis Winston. So all those guys get a shout out, but my game ball goes to Kittle. I'll go first on the Lackey. Everybody's like, stop giving it to all these quarterbacks that think, okay. Well, I gave it to, and he's going to accept it for his overall team because I thought they weren't ready to play. They looked past their opponent. The Ravens safety, Kyle Hamilton, usually he's all world, but that interception was right in his hands. They could have escaped with a victory, and that was a huge play. They allowed Jameis Winston to throw for over 300 yards on them, so I gave him my Lackey for this week, but he's accepting it for all the Ravens.
That's a good one. There's no way you can convince me otherwise. It's not Stevenson from Chicago. That's one of the biggest jackhole moves I've seen all season. The fact that you were taunting the fans, then decide to jump back into the play, then do what you're not supposed to do and tip the ball in the air to lose the game. He did the whole package right there. And then he had to own up to his teammates in the locker room afterwards, which had to be very humbling, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was some straight WWE stuff, Mm-hmm. They pantsed him, and Noah Brown gets the big catch, and Washington moves on, and the Bears are scratching their head. So yeah, there's some good lackeys right there as well. So as we get ready to wrap things up here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 Game Coast Sports Network, we're going to take a look ahead to Week 9 around the National Football League. And Kevin and I'll kind of give our early picks. Obviously, a lot of these, lines will change because injuries, etc. But to kick it off, you have the Houston Texans 6-2 at the New York Jets. I don't think the Jets are going to turn this thing around. I think it's further embarrassment on national TV. I say the Texans win this one. What do you think?
I think this is the last gasp for the Jets. I think if the Jets can't win this game, which they shouldn't, by the way, they're not better than Houston. But if the Jets can't win this game, you're going to see something happen with an Aaron Rodgers injury in the next coming weeks where he just sits on the sideline.
Yeah, and I think it's Tyrod Taylor is their backup. And, Aaron Rodgers is one of them guys. He would, not fake an injury, but he'd say, I pulled a hamstring and just sit on the sidelines, make the faces that he loves to make and just be upset and so forth. But, yeah, I think this is going to be a further embarrassment that hole's going to get deeper for them. Olbrich, he may be with Salah real soon. Starting on a Sunday slate, this one's interesting. You have the Dallas Cowboys going to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Cowboys did put up some stats. Dak Prescott, the highest paid player in the National Football League, is not playing like it. Now, obviously, he's going to lean on C.D. Lamb, who's all-world. I think he had 13 catches in that loss for them. Can Dallas turn this thing around? And this is partly from earlier. Is Atlanta for real? Can they hold off Dallas, or is this a letdown?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I thought Dallas was going to win that game against San Francisco, just for the fact it was like Dallas needed that win badly, and they still didn't get it. And then Atlanta coming off a win like that, You're going to see, I believe, the call it parity or mediocrity of the NFL. This is a game probably Atlanta will end up losing and Dallas will win, just to keep everyone in that middle mix there for the playoffs.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think Dallas was trying to get right. It's crazy because last year they played so well at home, and now this year, they're better on the road. So this is a road game. This is an opportunity for them to play against a defense that allows a lot of yards and so forth. So, and usually that's the type of game Dallas was. Now, the thing is, Dallas does not have any semblance of a running game. They did activate Dalvin Cook. He was out there. Their leading rusher was Ezekiel Elliott with 34 yards. He did score a touchdown, but, they got to get a running game going. But I think it kind of quells everything for a little bit, but Dallas's downward spiral, we know that by the end of the season, McCarthy's going to be in trouble. So I think Dallas wins too. You
Yeah,
have
the one thing I did see though, it was a stat counting yesterday. I guess it's been 21 games since Dallas has had a 100-yard rusher. That's a long time in the NFL.
Yeah, it's crazy. Maybe they can find Tony Dorsett and bring him out there,
Right.
or Emmett Smith. It's crazy because they were always known to have that exceptional running game. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, Ezekiel Elliott is closer to the end, but that offensive line is not what it used to be either. So a lot of their good linemen are now playing for Washington. All right, next game, Denver Broncos 5-3 are at the Baltimore Ravens. I think this is a get right game. You saw Lamar throw his helmet; he was pissed.
Hmm.
I think they get after Bo Nix in this one. I think Baltimore gets right at home.
Yeah, I agree. I think the clock strikes midnight there for Cinderella in Denver. They're going against a real team that is not too happy right now after losing that game to Cleveland. So I think Denver's just stepping in at the wrong time to play Baltimore.
You got the New Orleans. All right, forget that game. I think the Saints are going to beat Carolina. Obviously, you have Miami 2-5 traveling to Buffalo, a place where the two has had a lot of difficulty, including I think in the playoffs. What do you think in terms of this one? I think that Josh Allen has a big game, and the Bills continue their march possibly towards him winning MVP.
I think Buffalo's on a mission right now to basically say this is our season. We're going to take it. They're not. They need to get in the position to play Kansas City. And it's like, all right, do we want to play Kansas City in Kansas City or do we want to play them in Buffalo? So they have to keep pushing forward. And I think it's just day to day business. It's like, all right, punch the clock. Let's go to work. Let's win this game. And then let's go home. And then wash, rinse, repeat and do it again and see how they end up with Kansas City.
Yeah, and you have this is a game that's going to be interesting. We're talking about that 6-7 seeding. Chicago Bears 4-3. They're going to Arizona. Arizona's been moving the football. They're on a 2-game winning streak. James Conner running the football very effectively. I have to give a shout out to him. He's running downhill. And Kyler Murray, we talked about him making these dynamic plays, and he's not turning the football over. So big situation for him. Caleb Williams has got to play a lot better. He was indecisive this week, losing in Washington, and Cardinals defense with Buda Baker and his guys better than people think. I'm going to go with Arizona in this one.
I think we're going to see a lot of the makeup of the Chicago Bears team. To lose a game in which the way they did against Washington, how are they going to bounce back the following week? And Caleb Williams coming off a horrible game like that. I mean, was it the pressure that Caleb Williams possibly felt going against Jaden Daniels, as much as that was hyped up right there? And can he bounce back? Does he have that kind of resiliency, or is he going to let the moment take over? But I would lean towards Arizona in this game also.
Yeah. One of the last games we'll look at it here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, is this a letdown situation? Because we've seen the Eagles in the past. They let bad teams beat them sometimes. Think about Tommy DeVito last year with the Giants. They lose to him. There's all as an Eagles follower and you as a fan, we've seen this a lot of times. I don't think they let down. I think the Eagles continue to put up some big stats. Jacksonville, we talked about the difficulty they're having. And let's not forget, it is Doug Peterson, who's their former coach. They want to stick it to him.
Yeah, I think we're watching the Dougie P farewell tour right now, and the next stop, Philadelphia. On paper, no, the Eagles should not lose this game. And I think once again, I'm not buying in 100%, but I want to see the way in which Philadelphia does win this game, whether it's like against Cleveland or whether it's how they played against Cincinnati. If they can make this a convincing victory, I think that shows you how much the Eagles are growing. And the Eagles haven't even started to begin to play their best football yet. So they're progressing well at the right time, I believe.
Yeah, it is a big spot for them, and I think they win. Last game we'll look at for this week, Detroit Lions go to Green Bay. Now, they won there last year, which was the first time in like forever. They got to be heavy favorites because I don't think Love's going to play in this one with that groin injury. I don't think he's be back within a week. I think that, Goff, who we're not talking about, another MVP candidate, keeps it going. I think the Lions win in Green Bay.
Yeah, no love means no chance for a win by Green Bay, no matter how bad Detroit plays. They just have too much going offensively with their wide receiver. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Jameson Williams is still suspended one more game. But the way that even St. Brown didn't even have a big game from this past week, and they hung 52 points. So they just find a way to make it happen. And without Jordan Love, I don't think Green Bay can keep up.
Yeah. All right. Another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on a Coastal Sports Network, 102.9 The Game. Thank you so much for joining with us. We will talk to you next week.